A nobleman named Kuro Heartfield was enjoying tea when he accidentally spilled it after hearing surprising news from his secretary. He was going to be married. Kuro was a noble who had been governing a remote land for over 4 years. Although he was only 19 years old, his competence earned him the title of lord at a young age. However, that wasn't the only reason he became a lord. In truth, he was given the position to isolate him, essentially a quiet form of demotion. Kuro also had memories of his past life. In that life, he worked as a clothing pattern maker until he died at the age of 25. He also remembered an anime game from his past life called Kasasu, which was set in the Jade Kingdom's academy. The game's story revolved around using alchemical magic to solve problems through love and battle. Kuro had been reincarnated into that game world, but since he was older than the main characters, he had little involvement at the academy, not that he wanted any. His secretary Gray offered to pour him more tea. Kuro was content with his peaceful life in the countryside, balancing work and relaxation. It was the perfect life. However, Gray urged him to face reality and listen to the marriage proposal. He was happy that someone was willing to marry Kuro despite his bad reputation among noblewomen. Apparently, Kuro was known by the nickname Perverted Deviant, a fact he was hearing for the first time. Kuro found it troubling to learn that he was getting married. Gray told him it was already decided and showed him the church's certificates and his parents' approval form. Technically, they were already married. Kuro saw that the documents were legitimate, but his wife's family name looked familiar. He felt like he had seen it somewhere before. Since both the church and his parents had approved, Kuro couldn't complain anymore. Still, he hoped his partner wouldn't mind the countryside or the age gap between them. Gray sneered and asked if Kuro was into little girls, which Kuro quickly denied. Gray brushed off Kuro's reaction and pointed out that he was going to marry someone from the Valentine family. Kuro was sure he had heard that family name before. It had to be important in this world. Gray then revealed that Kuro's bride was Violet Valentine, a member of a duke's family. Kuro immediately remembered Violet from the game Kasasu. Violet Valentine is the rival of the protagonist in most routes of the Otome game. She was known as a beautiful villainess, but her fate was tragic in every scenario. In the first route, Violet hurt the protagonist and was killed by an enraged love interest. In the second, she became a victim of a rampaging monster. In the third, she challenged the protagonist and a target character to a duel, lost, and was expelled from the academy. Afterward, she lived in a distant convent until she died suddenly. In the fourth route, she married an ugly man from the countryside after losing the duel and expulsion, and she worried about being mistreated by a pervert. Kuro realized that the game creator really seemed to have it out for Violet, considering those endings. Then it hit him. Violet was on the fourth route right now. He couldn't believe it. He was the ugly guy from the countryside. If his sister were there, she would probably throw a party to celebrate her brother finally getting married after having no luck with women. Kuro figured that if someone close to the royal family was marrying a noble like him, Violet had probably challenged the protagonist to a duel out of jealousy. He lost, and he had to take responsibility. From what he remembered, Violet had a harsh personality. He doubted they would get along. Kuro suddenly glanced at Gray and wondered if Violet had a thing for younger boys. Gray noticed Kuro's stare and suspected that Kuro was thinking of using him to avoid the marriage. Kuro shrugged it off, saying he just thought Violet might prefer good-looking boys like Gray. Gray hoped Violet would like Kuro instead, but Kuro found that unlikely since Violet was clearly interested in Vermilion Randolph, the third prince and a key target. Compared to him, Kuro felt like a plain man. Gray then told Kuro to focus on preparing to entertain their guest instead of sulking. Kuro called him disrespectful for mocking his master. A few days later, Gray looked proud after finishing the job of trimming the bushes near the entrance. Kuro wasn't even sure what the word pruning meant. Just then, Violet entered through the main gate, saying she had taken the liberty of calling out since the gates were already open. She introduced herself and said she looked forward to working with them from now on. Kuro was stunned by her clear, crystal-like voice and her striking violet hair and eyes. She was the same figure he had seen in the game his sister played. However, the aggressive gaze and confident demeanor he remembered were now replaced by a quiet sadness. This was the woman who became Kuro's wife. They soon sat down for tea, and Kuro apologized for not preparing more. Violet didn't mind, saying she had already caused trouble by arriving earlier than expected. Kuro expected her to scold him, knowing her temper from the game, but Violet calmly sipped her tea and said it helped ease the fatigue from her long journey. Kuro watched her, surprised by how much she seemed to enjoy the tea. He started wondering if she was a better person than he had thought. Her calm and graceful manner reflected the elegance of someone from a noble family. Her tall frame made her seem mature despite being only 15, and every movement was refined, showing the signs of a good upbringing. Kuro remembered that her swordsmanship matched any skilled man, and her academic performance was consistently at the top. He realized just how talented Violet truly was. Since she was the game's main rival, He figured she must have challenged the protagonist to a duel, and lost. However, what bothered him most was her hair. He couldn't help but wonder if it had always been that straight. Violet noticed him staring, and Kuro quickly apologized for being rude. He introduced himself and mentioned how long he had served as the land's lord. He hoped they could look forward to their future together despite the sudden marriage. Violet coldly replied that she looked forward to it as well. She then reintroduced herself as the eldest daughter of the Valentine Duchy and the woman who had exchanged vows with Kuro. Her composed tone almost made Kuro call her Her Highness. She then realized she should start calling herself Violet Heartfield since she could no longer use the Duke's name. Kuro assured her that he wouldn't ask about the recent events until she felt more comfortable. Violet quietly thanked him for his consideration. Kuro already knew why Violet could no longer claim the Duke's name. Her engagement to the duel-crazed prince had been broken and her parents had abandoned her. On top of that, she had been forced to marry a man she barely knew. For a young girl, it was a cruel and overwhelming situation. Kuro then asked Gray to prepare a bath for Violet. He apologized in advance if the place felt cramped. Violet was surprised by his thoughtfulness but still thanked him. While taking a bath, Violet thought about how both she and Kuro had been forced into this situation. She seemed a bit conflicted about it. Meanwhile, Kuro prepared a separate room for Violet. Later that night, Violet knocked on Kuro's door and asked if she could come in. Kuro said he didn't mind and asked what was wrong. When the door opened, Violet stood there wearing thin nightwear that revealed her lingerie. It was too much for Kuro, and he quickly looked away while asking if she needed something. Violet blushed, struggling to find the right words. She reminded Kuro that they were now husband and wife, despite the sudden marriage and barely knowing each other. Kuro quietly agreed. She also mentioned that it was their first time spending the night together in the same mansion. Then she pointed out that it was their wedding night. Kuro was too stunned to respond as Violet stepped closer and slipped off her nightwear. She said she had come to be embraced and pressed herself against Kuro. He remained frozen, too shocked to speak. In most Otome games, the protagonist usually doesn't have a large chest. This was meant to avoid focusing on sexuality since the main goal was to attract potential partners through charm and personality. In contrast, the rivals often had larger chests, highlighting the difference between them and the protagonist. Kuro remembered this because of Violet, who was currently being surprisingly bold with him. She pressed her large chest against him, catching him off guard with her forwardness. They had just gotten married after meeting for the first time, and Kuro couldn't help but notice how big and beautiful they were. However, a part of him realized that designing clothes for such a figure would be challenging. While he had always preferred smaller ones, seeing Violet in front of him made him realize that he liked the bigger ones too. Kuro pushed Violet away, telling her to calm down. He asked her to put on something and talk things through first. Violet looked confused and reminded him that they were now husband and wife, so they should spend their first night together properly. She begged him not to leave her sitting there half-dressed, waiting for him to make a move. Kuro admitted they were married now, so there was nothing wrong with looking at her. Still, if he gave in, Gray would definitely tease him while congratulating him. Violet moved closer, asking him to touch her even though she looked embarrassed. She urged him to hurry up and pushed Kuro down onto the bed, pinning him beneath her. But Kuro noticed her trembling. He didn't want things to happen like this, not when Violet seemed so unsure. Violet's expression turned sad as she asked if Kuro didn't find her attractive. She wondered if men preferred girls who seemed vulnerable and sweet, someone who smiled easily and made others want to protect her. Kuro realized Violet was talking about the protagonist, a petite girl with strong alchemy skills, known for her bravery and kindness. Despite coming from a commoner background, she treated everyone with warmth, regardless of their status. Kuro figured Violet might have felt jealous of what the protagonist had. He also suspected that this situation matched the fourth root of Kasasu. He could only guess that the prince had developed feelings for the protagonist and discarded Violet. Violet insisted that she was already an adult. As a noble, she knew the significance of the wedding night and claimed she was prepared for it. Kuro saw how serious Violet was as she tried to follow the teachings about offering her purity on the first night. As a noble, she was taught to value her name over discomfort and follow tradition even if it brought pain. These lessons were meant to shape her into a proper noble. Seeing how Violet was so bound by this sense of duty, Kuro realized he didn't want to be swept up in that kind of thinking. He then told Violet that he disliked seeing her act that way. Hearing the word dislike made Violet freeze. It reminded her of the prince's harsh words when he told her never to show her face again. The last thing she heard from the person she loved was a rejection. Violet had worked hard to become a woman worthy of the prince, someone strong enough to stand by his side. Even after being rejected, she kept trying to fulfill her role as royalty. Even her father, who once told her that killing her would be unreasonable and still a crime, hadn't rejected her after the engagement was called off. Instead of being sent to a convent, she was told to marry a noble and make herself useful. Violet had heard rumors about Kuro Heartfield, the third son of the Heartfield Baron family. He had dropped out of Azalea Academy and was now a lord in a remote area. The rumors painted him as violent, domineering, lustful, vain, arrogant, and jealous. Not a single good thing was said about him. Violet figured that made him a fitting match for a fallen noble like her. Still, she couldn't find any real meaning in this sudden marriage. Even so, she spoke up first and arrived at her new home. To her surprise, Kuro and his secretary Gray seemed like decent people. She was even more surprised to see Kuro himself cleaning the house. She learned that only Kuro and Gray lived there since they couldn't afford to hire more staff. With just the two of them in such a large mansion, Violet wondered if it was proper for a man and a woman to live alone together. Both Kuro and Gray seemed unsure how to respond. Violet had never been afraid to speak her mind, even after the prince called her a nuisance for giving him advice. She had only done what she thought was right for him and the royal family. Even though she feared losing her family name and severing her connection with the prince, she accepted the Heartfield name. Kuro had told her that he wouldn't ask for details until she felt more comfortable. It was then that Violet realized Kuro wasn't the person the rumors made him out to be. Still, Kuro reminded her that men could be beasts, so she should remain cautious. Kuro had asked Gray to prepare a bath for Violet. Violet understood this as a sign that she needed to purify herself before offering her purity to someone. Since Kuro was known as the perverted deviant, she worried he might try something while she was in the bath. For now, she decided to scold him for not acting like a proper noble. Even if he was her husband, he needed to behave with dignity, regardless of his reputation. While bathing, Violet thought about how she wanted her first time to be special and done properly. She stayed in the bath for a while, but Kuro never showed up. Still, the bath was relaxing. She could stretch her legs freely and the towel was clean. She silently thanked Gray for preparing everything. Despite feeling calm, she remained cautious since Kuro was also in the bath. He might try to approach her in her room later. Amber, her maid, had told her that men usually make the first move, and if the husband desires it, the wife should accept it. This seemed like the perfect moment to wear the special underwear Amber had prepared for her coming-of-age ceremony. Even though she felt unsure, she still put them on. As time passed, Violet remained alone and awake in her room. She wondered if Kuro was still in the bath or perhaps waiting for her. Her classmates had mentioned that women could also take the initiative if they were kept waiting. After hesitating for a while, she decided to make the first move. However, things didn't go as expected. Kuro seemed upset with her. Feeling embarrassed, Violet apologized, thinking that maybe someone like her wasn't good enough. But then, Kuro pulled her closer and held her cheeks. His sudden gesture made Violet's face turn bright red. Kuro's intense gaze and his hands on her cheeks left Violet speechless. He squeezed her soft cheeks, making her feel both confused and surprised. He told her to look into his eyes, and Violet suddenly noticed how beautiful they were, a deep emerald color. It felt strange, almost like it was her first time really seeing his eyes, even though they had already spoken earlier. Kuro then accused Violet of making a fool of herself. He pointed out how she had been acting at the academy, scaring off women who approached Prince Vermilion and ignoring the prince's words. He suggested that the prince might have liked Violet, but her cold and harsh behavior toward those who admired him probably made him hate her. Kuro added that he couldn't forgive her for that and mentioned how he had challenged her to a duel, which ended with him getting hit by the prince and the others. Violet broke into a cold sweat, realizing that no one knew those details until now. Kuro went on, saying that Violet only had attendants, not real friends. When Violet called him rude and insisted there had to be at least one person, Kuro reminded her that this person had likely pulled away because Violet told them not to get too close. Violet wondered how Kuro knew all of this. He then accused her of being a proud duchess who relied on the prince's status to look down on others. He even brought up the embarrassing nickname Amethyst Paper Thin Machine, which apparently came from an incident where Violet and her group caused chaos and ended up humiliating themselves. Embarrassed, Violet asked what he was talking about, but Kuro just squeezed her cheeks harder and told her to listen carefully. She might actually learn something. Kuro wore a kind smile and told Violet that doing something for someone else is sacrificing oneself. However, if that leads to being rejected by someone, it would become painful in the end. But when she came to like someone, he asked her not to deny all the efforts which had been made. Kuro's words sank into Violet, slowly dissolving the heavy emotions buried deep in her heart. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized that, deep down, all she ever wanted was to be recognized. She had always taken pride in her actions as the Duke's daughter, but part of her longed for someone to tell her that not everything she had done was wrong. Kuro told her that the Violet he knew was hardworking and strong-willed, which made her beautiful. He encouraged her to be more proud of herself, and not to hate who she was. He admitted that he couldn't stand seeing her dislike herself like that. After being rejected by the prince, all Violet ever wanted was for someone to stay by her side. Now that she and Kuro were together as a couple, they had a connection. But Violet had been acting recklessly, not realizing that she wasn't alone anymore. She thanked Kuro for his kind words, and Kuro was happy to have helped. Violet then mentioned that the rumors about Kuro being a pervert and degenerate might not be so reliable after all. Kuro nervously asked how far that nickname had spread, clearly embarrassed. He turned away, flustered, and told Violet to put something on. Violet paused for a moment, then leaned toward him. She reminded him that it was their wedding night and asked if he really wouldn't hold her. Kuro firmly told her that this wasn't about pity. He wanted her to take her time and create a place for herself first. He reassured her that they had plenty of time to grow together as a couple. Even though Violet felt relieved that she was safe, a small feeling of disappointment lingered inside her. Kuro suddenly leaned forward and kissed Violet on the forehead. She was caught off guard and blushed. Kuro laughed, saying he had planned to do something more impressive, but things didn't go as expected. He figured it was better not to force anything this time. Violet, feeling embarrassed, playfully punched him and called him stubborn. Kuro just laughed and told her to put on some clothes. Afterward, Violet got dressed and talked with Kuro about where she would be living from now on in their upcoming married life. The time with Kuro felt calm and comforting. The next morning, Gray clapped his hands and teasingly congratulated Kuro. Kuro expected that reaction from Gray, but it was still annoying. He insisted that nothing happened the way Gray imagined. Gray joked that lying was the first step toward becoming a pervert. He then asked if nothing really happened on their first night, calling Kuro useless and spineless. Kuro couldn't believe he was getting teased no matter what he did. The night before, the couple talked only until Violet fell asleep after the long journey. She had been talking cutely in her sleep, and Kuro carefully carried her to her room without waking her. Gray said that what mattered most was that Kuro was kind to Violet. He admitted he was just worried since Kuro looked tired. He jokingly asked if Kuro was the type to take advantage of vulnerable women with sweet words, hoping that the two would end up being a quarrelsome couple. Kuro responded that it would probably look bad to others. Gray found it impressive that someone as unpopular as Kuro had managed to handle the situation so well. Kuro brushed it off, saying it was just a coincidence that his words matched with Violet's. He couldn't tell anyone that it was all thanks to his memories from his past life. All he knew was that Violet's self-sacrifice had been genuine, and her efforts were what really mattered. He understood that everyone had strengths and weaknesses. He didn't want to forget the weaknesses, but he also didn't want to be held back by them. Gray wondered if that was all there was to it. Just then, Violet opened the office door and apologized for oversleeping. Kuro understood since she had just come back from a long trip. He greeted her warmly, and Violet smiled as she returned the greeting. She also thanked Gray for the bath, which pleased him. Gray then mentioned that Violet looked much more relaxed compared to the day before. He had heard from Kuro and assumed it was because of the good conversation they had. Violet blushed and held her forehead, saying she had experienced something even the prince had never done to her, but it wasn't unpleasant. She was referring to the forehead kiss, but Gray misunderstood and thought it was something inappropriate. Kuro quickly denied it, telling Gray not to get the wrong idea. Gray laughed and teased Kuro, reminding him they were already married, and playfully congratulated him again. Violet, confused, asked what they were talking about, but Kuro told her not to worry about it. An hour later, the couple finished their meal. Kuro asked Violet if she liked the food. She said she enjoyed its simple and comforting flavor. Kuro was happy to hear that, but wanted to learn more about her taste preferences. Just then, Gray joined the conversation with a serious expression. He said there was something important to discuss with the newly married couple. Kuro asked if he could call Violet his dear mother. The couple paused for a moment until Violet asked why. Kuro scolded Gray for bringing it up so suddenly. Violet then remembered that Gray was Kuro's secretary. Kuro explained that while it might seem that way to others, the truth was more complicated. He formally introduced Gray as both his secretary and his child. Gray appeared calm now, but he had once been a slave under the former lord. When Kuro arrived at the mansion, Gray had already been in a weakened state. He had been following orders without much thought, barely able to speak. Over time, he slowly opened his heart, and as part of that process, Kuro gave him the surname Heartfield. Violet realized that if Gray was Kuro's adopted child, that made her the adopted mother. Gray admitted that it was already hard to believe that a noble would adopt someone like him, so his request to call Violet mother might have been too much. Violet also recalled that the slave trade was technically banned in the country. After considering everything, she decided to take on the role of Gray's mother. Kuro was surprised by how quickly she accepted the idea. Violet then approached Gray and told him he could call her mother any time. Kuro couldn't believe how naturally Violet went along with it. Gray hesitantly called her mother, and Kuro wondered how serious they both were. Still, he could see how gracefully Violet handled the situation, even though her eyes burned with determination. Violet then wondered how she should address Gray. Kuro suggested that she call him the usual name, but Violet wanted to treat him with warmth so their bond as mother and child would grow stronger. Soon they began calling each other like a real mother and child. Somehow, Violet's parental instincts seemed to kick in too hard. Kuro couldn't believe how easily the usually strict and proud princess had been swayed. She looked like a natural airhead at that moment. He asked her to calm down, admitting that while she wasn't wrong, she might have misunderstood something. Violet replied that she had been reflecting on her past and realized that she lacked flexibility. To adapt to this new land, she was determined to become a wonderful mother and raise Gray into someone great. Kuro advised her not to accept everything without question. Gray then thanked them, saying he was happy. Kuro decided to stop questioning the situation, thinking it might be rude to dig any deeper. Despite the commotion, Gray reminded Violet to maintain proper formality between them in public. Kuro could tell Violet was disappointed, realizing that her sense of flexibility still needed some work. Kuro went outside and told Violet to relax for a while since he would show her around later in the afternoon. Violet asked where they were going, but Kuro only said they had some business to take care of. Violet asked to join them. She reminded Kuro that she was now his wife and that a wife should understand her husband's work. Kuro was left speechless by how stunning she looked. When Violet asked if something was wrong, Gray commented that Kuro's composure still had a long way to go. Kuro told Gray to stop saying unnecessary things and warned Violet to be prepared. He said that the duties of a lord were not as easy as she might think. His serious tone made Violet feel a bit nervous. Violet was surprised to see what being a lord actually involved. She found Kuro and Gray working like farmers, which left her confused. Kuro proudly explained that he was tending the fields by spreading fertilizer and tilling the soil with a hoe. Violet was shocked but not entirely surprised, considering Kuro was a lord from the countryside. She reminded herself not to hesitate since she was now part of the Heartfield family. Wanting to help, Violet tried to lift a nearby bucket, but the strong smell overwhelmed her. She asked Kuro what it was, and he explained that it was organic fertilizer mixed with cow and pig manure, which helped crops grow beautifully. Violet hoped Kuro wouldn't mention manure with such a happy expression. Unable to handle the smell, Violet stepped away and apologized for losing her composure. Kuro suggested she rest under the shade. Just then, a villager arrived and praised Kuro and Gray for their hard work in the fields. She offered them fresh vegetables from her garden, which Gray gratefully accepted. The villager playfully warned Kuro not to push himself too hard in front of such a lovely lady. Kuro asked her to stop teasing. Violet had been raised to believe that getting her hands dirty was beneath her, but after seeing how naturally Kuro and the villager interacted, she realized there was something truly rewarding about building connections with others. Kuro accidentally spilled the fertilizer and ended up covered in it. Gray started teasing him, joking that even the fertilizer seemed to like him. Violet watched with concern, which Kuro noticed. He figured it would take some time for her to adjust. Gray told him not to lose hope, but Kuro asked him to stop reading his mind. Later that afternoon, after cleaning up and changing clothes, Kuro offered to show Violet around his domain. As they walked through the streets, Violet noticed a magnificent church ahead. Kuro explained that it was just a relic from the days when it attracted countless believers, but the priest and sister were still there. He mentioned that Shiki, his domain, was a melting pot of different people, most of whom weren't original residents. Violet understood he was talking about people who had stumbled into the place in the past and reassured him not to worry about her. Kuro thought that Shiki really was a place for castaways, just like him. They finally arrived at the church, where Violet asked if there were people who embezzled or went against the church's teachings. Kuro agreed and suggested they meet them first. The inside of the church was empty, but a woman's voice suddenly echoed through the hall, mentioning that someone had ventured out. Violet thought the woman was talking about her, but the real target was Kuro. A woman appeared out of nowhere and suddenly dropped a powerful kick on Kuro, calling him a traitor. The impact was so strong that it stirred up a gust of wind. Violet shielded her eyes from the dust and quickly checked on Kuro. Thankfully, Kuro was strong enough to block the attack. The woman seemed surprised to see Kuro. He swiftly grabbed her leg and threw her aside. However, the woman skillfully spun in midair and landed perfectly on her feet. She couldn't believe that Kuro had managed to evade an attack from a divine messenger like her and called him impressive. She warned Kuro that he would soon face divine punishment. Kuro calmly asked if it was really acceptable for a divine messenger to attack someone without warning. Just then, Gray greeted the woman, Kyan, and remarked how glad she was to see her looking vibrant. Kyan replied that it was also nice to see Gray looking beautiful. Kuro then asked Kyan what she meant about him being a traitor. Violet was confused and couldn't find the right moment to speak. Kyan, visibly angry, asked if Kuro really didn't understand. She claimed that Kuro had committed a grave act of betrayal. Concerned, Violet wondered what Kuro had really done. Kuro didn't understand what Kyan was talking about and asked for an explanation. Kyan couldn't believe that Kuro really didn't understand. She pointed out how Kuro had married someone else, leaving her and the priest behind. She called him nothing but a traitor. Kyan also mentioned that she had wanted to marry Father Snow White. Kuro told her to just confess her feelings. Kyan angrily told him not to mock the pure heart of a maiden with unrequited love. Kuro called her a mess. Kyan then turned to Violet and said she was wasted on someone like Kuro. Still, she offered to handle the wedding when the time came. Violet thanked her for the offer. Cayenne finally introduced herself as Cayenne Sears, the church's only sister. Violet also introduced herself and said she hoped to get along with her. Cayenne decided to give her the nickname I.O. and hugged her. After that, Cayenne excused herself, saying she had an errand to run. Cayenne left suddenly like a storm. Kuro figured Cayenne had been waiting for him to walk in and kick him. Gray noticed something was bothering Violet and asked about it. Violet remembered that people connected to the church usually didn't wear anything under their clothes because of their doctrine. That's why she was surprised that Cayenne wasn't wearing much. What really worried her was Cayenne's deeply slit dress. A small movement, and the flower buds would be exposed. Gray only realized this after Violet pointed it out. Violet then remembered how Cayenne had kicked Kuro from above. She glared at Kuro and questioned what had just happened. Kuro insisted he hadn't seen anything, and was honestly surprised that nothing had been exposed even from that angle. He swore that even if he had seen something, he wouldn't have thought much about it. Violet couldn't believe the pervert was real. She figured Kuro was already used to seeing such things and wondered if he would stay just as calm when it was her turn to reveal something. Kuro quickly denied it, saying that was different. He was trying to stay rational and in control. He asked what Violet was even talking about. Gray, watching from the side, was amused to see a lover's quarrel from the front row. After visiting the church, Kuro led Violet on the rest of the domain tour. Violet agreed, recalling that meeting someone as influential as Cayenne was rare. Suddenly, a man with an eerie aura appeared behind her, making Violet jump. The man congratulated them on their marriage, saying he had heard the rumors about Kuro's wife. Kuro introduced him as Orchid, a citizen of the domain. Although Orchid practiced black magic, he was known to be kind-hearted. Just then, another man showed up and immediately checked Kuro's wounded palm. Kuro casually explained that this man, Ivory, always appeared when someone was injured. He claimed he got the wound while working in the fields. Ivory couldn't believe Kuro was letting the injury sit untreated and insisted on handling it himself. He also asked if Kuro had any other wounds. Kuro swatted Ivory's hand away, saying he would take care of it himself. Violet asked how he was feeling, and Ivory introduced himself as a doctor. Kuro added that Ivory was a bit of a pervert who got overly excited about healing injuries, but despite that, he was an excellent doctor. Ivory told Violet to visit him anytime if she got hurt. Suddenly, a loud man barged in after hearing about Kuro's bride. He called Violet beautiful and asked if she would consider a polygamous marriage. Kuro introduced him as Kark Roberts, a fool who had fled to Shiki after getting into trouble with too many women. Kuro added that Kark would back off if Violet asked him to. Next, a girl appeared and started speaking in dark, complicated words like she was stuck in an 8th grade fantasy phase. Violet had no idea what she was talking about. Kuro translated it as a welcome greeting and introduced her as Apricot, a Chunabu girl who admired witches. As Violet tried to process everything, someone in heavy armor walked past them. She asked who that was. Kuro explained that it was Robo, someone popular with the kids. He added that a shy person named Blonde was underneath the armor. Violet smiled, trying to take in all the strange introductions. She politely told everyone it was nice meeting them, even though she was clearly overwhelmed. Kuro was surprised she was managing to speak at all. Afterward, the couple returned home and Violet was completely exhausted. Kuro handed her a cup of tea. Once she calmed down, Violet commented on how unique the citizens were. Kuro was surprised by how calmly she summed it all up. Gray walked in with a wedding gift from Kark, the loud man from earlier. Kuro told him to throw it away. Violet couldn't believe Kuro was rejecting someone's kindness, but she was curious why the gift was a book with a painted cover. Gray said he didn't know what was inside, but he had heard that the contents were important for newlyweds. Kuro gave the book a quick read and immediately decided to beat up Kark. It was the first time Violet had seen Kuro give off such a murderous aura. The land of Shiki was truly a place where perverts and eccentric people gathered, and Violet could clearly see that the domain was full of strange people. Kuro had no choice but to agree. Noticing the clock, Kuro mentioned that it was already late and asked if Violet had any preferences for dinner. Violet asked if Kuro would be the one cooking. Kuro said he was on duty this time since he and Gray were taking turns. He also mentioned that there was no one else around to cook for them. Violet felt a bit concerned, but Gray assured her that they could handle it. Since Violet looked tired, Kuro decided to make something simple using the vegetables they had received earlier. Violet thought for a moment before telling Kuro that Shiki was a strange place. Kuro asked what she meant, but she wasn't sure how to explain it except that the villagers were unique. Kuro told her not to hold back since he already knew his people were odd. She remembered how most of the villagers they met had congratulated them on their marriage, even though she hadn't done anything for them yet. It surprised her to be congratulated by so many people, especially since it had been a while since her engagement to the prince was annulled. She apologized for bringing up that topic. Still, despite hearing various rumors, she now felt that Shiki wasn't such a bad place after all. Kuro told her not to force herself. Violet found it amusing that even the Lord seemed unsure about the praise for his land. Kuro noticed how Violet's eyes, despite her smile, looked sad. He guessed she was thinking about the past she had left behind. From the game, he remembered what had happened at the academy. He couldn't convince himself that his land was good enough to make her forget those thoughts. He knew it might take time, but he hoped that one day Violet would come to truly love this land. He could only hope. 3 weeks had passed since Violet arrived in Shiki. Compared to her time at the academy, life in the countryside was less convenient. However, with Kuro and Gray's help, she gradually adjusted to it. There were still things she didn't understand. First was Gray, Kuro's secretary and adopted son, who had exceptional magical abilities in all attributes. Violet had once strongly denied the idea of a woman approaching the prince at the academy because of their difference in social status. That woman reminded her of the former feudal lord who had oppressed Gray. She wondered if someone like her deserved to be the mother of a child who had endured such emotional scars. One day while doing chores, Gray tried to imitate Apricot's dramatic words and used magic to cut the grass. Kuro told him to just cut it normally. Curious, Violet approached Gray and asked if he was struggling with any difficult feelings. Gray asked for an example, but then assured her that there was something that made him happy now. He said it was thanks to Kuro, who allowed him to become Violet's child. Violet hesitated and asked why Gray would accept someone like her as his mother. Gray explained that Kuro had never treated him differently, and had even given him a family name. Since Kuro, who had done so much for him, recognized Violet as his wife, Gray naturally accepted her too. Kuro was beloved by everyone in the domain. Despite taking over the land just 3 years ago and being only about 4 years older than Violet, he often seemed more mature and aware of everything that had happened at the academy. Kuro then asked if Violet would be helping with his work again. He handed her a hat and told her to wear it, suggesting that she step out of the shade from time to time. Violet wondered why someone like Kuro wouldn't abandon her. She wanted to understand him better and hoped to walk beside him in this land filled with unique people. Just then, a hooded woman passed by and whispered into Violet's ear. She warned that the esteemed one was advising Violet not to get carried away. Violet replied that she understood. It seemed like she couldn't catch a break. Hearing the warning from the hooded woman made Violet feel sad. She only wanted to walk alongside Kuro and become someone admired like him. Violet assumed that the woman had been assigned by her father to watch over her. She asked what would happen if she ignored the warning, but the woman said nothing. Instead, she simply reminded Violet that she had given her warning before disappearing into thin air. Violet knew all too well that her father no longer cared about her. Still, she could now see more clearly the kind of person she wanted to become. But that wasn't something she wanted to achieve by causing trouble for others, especially Kuro. Just then, Kuro noticed her walking far behind and asked what was wrong. Violet apologized for the delay and suggested they keep going. Kuro asked if there was a reason she had stopped. Violet assured him it was nothing, saying she was just admiring the view. Kuro leaned toward her, looking her in the eyes. He could tell something was off and asked if she was hurt. Violet said it might have just looked that way because of the hat's shadow and assured him she was fine and able to keep working. Kuro said that was good enough for him. Violet insisted there was no problem at all. She was surprised by how sharp Kuro was, but she didn't want to make him worry any further. Gray showed up with a worried look and said something had happened to the field. It was ruined, and Kuro wondered if monsters had caused the damage. They informed the villagers afterward. Ryan asked if Kuro wanted them to protect the town. Kuro confirmed this and explained that there were unfamiliar footprints in the field. If it was a new type of monster, the threat level would be unknown. For now, Kuro decided to scout the surrounding area and ask those who could fight to protect the town while he was away. Kayan assured him that she would handle things. Kuro told Violet to stay behind, but she insisted on going with him. Despite her father's warnings, Violet saw this as her chance to contribute to the domain. She believed it was the duty of nobles to eliminate any threats to the people. In the forest, Violet asked if monster subjugation was common for a lord in Shiki. Kuro said it was rare and told her to be careful. The road was muddy from the rain the night before. Kuro asked if she had any combat experience, and Violet said she had done mock training at the academy. Kuro remembered the training grounds just outside the academy, and recalled a particular scene from the game where the protagonist would slip and fall because of the poor footing, leading to an encounter with the target character. Violet admitted that she wasn't used to the dirt and apologized if it caused any trouble. Kuro reassured her, saying everyone has things they aren't used to. That's what partners are for. Violet said she was counting on him. Kuro was surprised by how straightforward Violet had become. She actively helped with his work and even learned how to cook from Gray so she could help with the mansion's duties. Despite being unfamiliar with rural life and the ways of commoners, Violet was trying her best to adapt. Kuro remembered how Violet always faced a cruel fate in every route of the game. He knew he had to keep a close eye on her. Violet struggled to walk through the muddy path but hurried anyway since the people in the domain were growing uneasy. Kuro warned her that rushing wouldn't help. Suddenly, Violet slipped and closed her eyes, bracing for the fall. Luckily, Kuro caught her just in time and asked if she was okay. Blushing, she apologized and said she owed him one. Kuro replied that he was just relieved she wasn't hurt. Violet then mentioned that the last time Kuro held her like that was on their wedding night. She added that he felt tougher than she had expected. Just then, Violet heard splashing sounds and told Kuro to stay quiet. She mentioned hearing water nearby. They carefully moved forward to find the source of the sound. Violet wondered if there was a river nearby, but Kuro said there shouldn't be one. Even if a monster was bathing in a puddle, the noise was too loud. He thought it might be dangerous if it was a giant monster, so he decided they should head back to town and request reinforcements. Suddenly, they heard a monster's roar and a woman's scream. Violet quietly chanted a spell, and Kuro immediately felt stronger. Violet said they wouldn't have time to call for help. She explained that she had cast a spell to erase their scent and block recognition. Without wasting any time, they ran toward the noise, thinking a traveler might be under attack. Violet and Kuro soon came across a thick cloud of steam. Inside it, they saw the shadows of a group of monsters and a human figure. Violet told Kuro to get down and swung her sword hard, cutting through the steam. As the mist cleared, they saw a woman standing confidently in front of the monsters, making noise to herself. She called the monsters her children and told them to give thanks to the land for the hot springs. The monsters barked at her, and the woman assumed they were admiring her beauty. The couple silently watched as the woman flaunted herself in front of the monsters. Violet asked if this was normal in Shiki, but Kuro denied it. He confirmed that the woman was indeed a genuine pervert. The woman admired her own figure, calling it a perfect golden ratio. She couldn't believe a hot spring capable of enhancing her beauty existed, claiming it was the world's way of showing appreciation for her. Kuro silently agreed that the woman was beautiful, but her exaggerated poses seemed strange to him. He had a feeling he had seen her somewhere before. The woman glared in their direction and told them to look at her naked body with confidence. The couple was shocked that the pervert had noticed them. It would be bad if she turned out to be a demon Tamara who could control countless monsters. The woman then said that art wouldn't be complete without viewers and told them to come out so her artistic value would increase. The monsters barked in agreement. Kuro and Violet thought it was foolish to stay on guard in front of such a woman. They decided to lift Violet's spell and stepped out of the bushes. The woman saw a young man and woman who seemed to appreciate art and called them lucky for meeting her by chance in such a remote place. She said the admission fee was on the house and invited them to enjoy the view of her body. Violet interrupted the woman and asked if she wasn't even a bit embarrassed. Kuro nervously glanced to the side. The woman replied that there was nothing to be embarrassed about since she had nothing to hide. Somehow, Kuro thought that response was cool. The woman then gave them a sharp look and assumed they were a couple. She apologized if that was the case and wondered if Violet was worried that her boyfriend would see her naked and start comparing them. The woman told them not to worry since love could hide such things, but she wasn't sure if there was a love strong enough to surpass her impressive figure. Her words and attitude angered Violet. Kuro quickly stopped his wife from drawing her sword. He realized they were getting nowhere and asked Violet to step back. Kuro then introduced himself by his full name and position as the lord governing the land of Shiki, where they were currently standing. He asked for the woman's identity. The woman apologized for not properly greeting the lord of the land. She introduced herself as a traveler named Schwartz. Kuro froze, sensing that he knew who she was. Schwartz smiled and called their meeting perfect timing, saying it must have been fate that brought them together. Kuro clearly remembered hearing Schwartz's name before. She was another character from the Otomi game. In some routes, hostile characters like her could lead the protagonist straight to a bad ending. Schwartz was one of those dangerous characters who casually killed the game's targets and even the protagonist. After that, Schwartz greeted them properly and said sorry for the trouble her monsters had caused. The couple was shocked and couldn't say anything. They wondered where the strange person they saw earlier had gone. Kuro then asked why Schwartz had been naked and acting full of herself a while ago. Schwartz answered by saying she believed something becomes more artistic when it's not always visible. That was her only reason. Kuro thought her answer sounded both long and short at the same time. He felt like she was trying to sound smart, but he still didn't understand what she meant. Schwartz snapped her fingers and her wolves started to walk away. Kuro and Violet were both surprised and confused. Violet guessed that Schwartz was a demon tamer. Schwartz then explained that she had always been able to understand how demons think. She met a child during her travels, and that child had followed her ever since. She said that people who didn't know the area ran away because of that. Kuro thought that was probably why the fields had been damaged. Schwartz went on to say that normal demon tamers give orders to demons, but in her case, she only talked to them. She didn't control them at all. Violet noticed that Schwartz called them her children. Schwartz said it was the monsters who liked being called that in a loving way. Kuro remembered how Schwartz was in the game. She was more dangerous there. She even killed other characters just to survive. In the game, Schwartz was known as an assassin. As far as Kuro knew, there wasn't a storyline where she ended up with Violet. In fact, the situation they were in now, where Violet was going to marry a frontier lord, wasn't in the game at all. He remembered how, in the game, Schwartz once told the player they could hate her if it helped them feel better. She said that would make things easier for them. Kuro knew that Schwartz never had a clear goal, and maybe it was smarter to stay alert and see what happened instead of causing trouble. He thought maybe he should just work with her and guide her for now. Suddenly, Violet asked if Schwartz was really who she said she was. She also asked if it was okay to talk for a bit. Kuro felt confused by the situation. Violet then said sorry to Kuro and asked to speak with Schwartz alone. After that, Schwartz began asking questions, wondering what Violet wanted to talk about. She also asked if Violet was interested in her as a kind of art. Violet then asked if she had been sent by the Duke. Schwartz looked puzzled. Violet mentioned that she had already met someone from a surveillance team and thought maybe Schwartz was one of them. But since Violet didn't feel any danger from her, she thought maybe Schwartz was just pretending. Violet told her clearly that she could handle her own problems, and she asked Schwartz not to hurt Kuro or the villagers. Schwartz got even more confused and asked what Violet had been talking about. She said she was just passing through on her travels. Violet could tell that Schwartz wasn't lying and started thinking maybe she had been worrying too much. Soon after, the two of them rejoined Kuro. When Kuro asked what had happened, Violet simply said she shared her thoughts about how Schwartz acted as a woman. Right then, Schwartz apologized for causing trouble and said she would repay anyone affected. She asked Kuro and Violet to guide her to an inn. Kuro told her not to worry since it was just an accident. But Schwartz didn't accept that. She said the damage was caused by spoiling her children and that it wouldn't be right to ignore what happened or take advantage of people's kindness. Kuro remembered how dangerous Schwartz was in the game, so he still couldn't let his guard down. But at that moment, she didn't seem threatening. As they returned to the village, Gray welcomed Kuro and Violet back, glad they were safe. While Kuro tried to introduce Schwartz, Violet quickly ran off, saying she would tell Kyan and the others about what happened. Gray then introduced himself to Schwartz. Kuro explained there were 3 places to stay in the village: the Rainbow, which was a tavern, inn, and guild all in one; the church; and the Lord's home, which was Kuro's manor. Schwartz said she would stay for a week and asked to be taken to the Rainbow. As they walked with her, Kuro thought about what to do next. If Schwartz was just passing by, that was fine, but if she had bad intentions, he needed to watch her closely. Schwartz then asked if the young boy was Gray. Gray asked what she meant. Kuro guessed that Schwartz might have been sent to catch or hurt Gray, thinking he was from a secret noble family. If that was true, Kuro knew he had to protect him. But instead, Schwartz said Gray was a handsome boy. She grabbed his chin and got closer, asking if he wanted to spend the night with her. Kuro realized that Schwartz was just acting creepy. Gray thought it was some kind of game and said he could play cards with her later after his work. Kuro quickly told him that's not what she meant. He hugged Gray to keep him safe and thought about using his power as the village lord to send Schwartz away. Schwartz said that was what she meant and suggested they play card games like poker or dice-sai. Kuro was left confused again. Schwartz said she enjoyed learning local rules during her travels and asked Gray to teach her different games. Gray got excited and said he didn't mind. He even asked Kuro for permission. As long as they didn't cause any trouble, Kuro let them be. The two of them cheered happily. Kuro, still unsure, wondered if he had just misunderstood everything in a weird way. Later that night, Schwartz won a card game against Kuro and the others. Kuro finally realized how good Schwartz was at playing cards. She had mentioned before that she was confident, and she was glad the place they brought her to was full of energy and fun. She said her winning streak was becoming too easy and that games should be exciting. Then, she said she would take off her clothes whether she won or lost. Kuro thought she just wanted a reason to undress. At that moment, Schwartz played a royal straight flush. She took off some clothes and said the win was like seeing a piece of art. Kuro quickly asked her to stop and covered Gray's eyes. The others were shocked and thought Schwartz was a wild person. Kuro said she had been like that since the day they met. Some of the others got too interested, wanting to see more, especially the wound on her body. The night continued with lots of noise and chaos. After that, Kuro and Gray went home. Kuro felt more tired, but Gray said he had fun. Kuro couldn't stop thinking about how different Schwartz seemed during the game compared to how he had known her before. He even started wondering if there were 2 people with the same name. Just then, someone came up from behind and grabbed Gray while saying sorry. It was Schwartz, smiling. Kuro couldn't believe he had let his guard down, and now it seemed like Gray was her target all along. But Schwartz suddenly acted sweet, thanked Gray for the fun time, and called him cute. She asked if they could play again someday. Gray complained that she smelled like alcohol. That's when Kuro realized Schwartz was just drunk and hugging people. When they got back home, Violet asked Gray if Schwartz had done anything strange, like she was his mom worrying about him. Gray told her everything was fine. He just showed Schwartz around Shiki. He also shared that Schwartz said sorry to the people who were affected and even played with the kids. Gray noticed that Schwartz was good with children and said he seemed like a good person. Violet couldn't believe Gray was being so easily fooled. She complained about Kuro allowing Gray to spend time with someone like Schwartz. Kuro didn't have much to say except that he had other things to deal with. Gray then asked Kuro why Violet didn't trust Schwartz. Kuro explained it was because of a few strange encounters. At first he thought Schwartz was just a creepy person showing off, but later she seemed more serious than expected. He also said that she got along with the strange villagers, so there didn't seem to be a real reason to hate her. Violet was surprised and worried. She asked if even Kuro had been charmed by Schwartz when they met the day before. She tried to compare herself to Schwartz, but Kuro said that wasn't what he meant. He started to think that Schwartz was very different from how she looked in the game version. It began to feel silly to keep being suspicious of her. At the same time, Schwartz was talking to someone by using communication magic. She asked if he was her client this time and said she had finally arrived in Shiki. The man on the call told her to go ahead with the mission. Schwartz then asked if it was really okay to kill Violet Valentine. The client made it clear that Violet was no longer a Valentine. Schwartz understood and told him to look forward to the results. When the client noticed her voice sounded different, Schwartz said it was just part of the character she was playing. The next morning, Schwartz was outside playing with the kids. Kuro watched them from his office window. He noticed that she seemed to be having a good time. While going through some papers, Kuro saw something unusual and asked Violet about it. Violet said it was one of the new laws from the royal capital. It talked about how land and control were shared between the Marquis family and the Frontier Count's family. Kuro thanked her because he hadn't heard about it before. The two of them kept working. As Kuro looked at Violet, he realized she had been focusing more on her work lately. At first he thought she was finally relaxing, but it seemed like she was working even harder, like she was trying to forget something. Violet apologized and asked Kuro for help because there were some parts she couldn't decide on her own. Kuro asked which ones. She brought up the robot dispatch expense invoice for the nearby town. Kuro said just signing it was usually enough, and for some reason, it always got approved. Sometimes they were even billed for repairs, so the cost usually evened out, but it was still helpful. Next, Violet mentioned the Evil God Summoning Festival from the Black Magic Society. Kuro explained it was actually just a ceremony held by people who liked black cats and black magic. Then, Violet asked about something called the String of Words Wedged Between Crosses. Kuro said it was a strange, overly dramatic request form. In short, someone wanted to build a place to test their magic using public money. There was also a request to create a resurrection drug, but Kuro told her to ignore it. Another one asked to bring in more women between their teens and 70s from outside the area, which Kuro also told her to ignore like always. Violet couldn't help but think that being a feudal lord was a strange job. Kuro simply said that things were just like that in Shiki. Just then, Kuro saw something outside the window. At the same time, Kyan ran in and went straight to Schwartz. She was out of breath and looked angry. She told Schwartz to stop pretending and said she suspected her of something. She told Schwartz to admit what she had done. Schwartz looked confused and asked what she was talking about. She told Kyan to calm down before they talked, but Kyan didn't listen. She told Schwartz again to stop acting innocent and then suddenly jumped and kicked her hard. The kick hit strongly, but Kyan felt some pushback. Schwartz had blocked it with her arm. Then she said Kyan was being rude for using violence. She also said Kyan's outfit didn't look nice and that it wasn't something that should be worn in public. She was clearly talking about something inappropriate. Kyan got even more upset and asked what she meant by that. Schwartz then looked to the side and saw that the children nearby were scared. She asked Kyan to stop and pointed out how frightened the kids were. She said she would say sorry if she really did something wrong, and asked Kyan why she had attacked her in the first place. Kyan just shouted a curse word in anger. Suddenly, a villager ran in and said they had to tell the Lord right away. When Kuro and Violet heard that, they came out of their mansion. Kuro asked what was going on with Kyan and Blue. Blue had dropped to her knees crying and said something had happened to her child. Violet tried to calm her down. Blue then explained that her child had been taken by a monster. Everyone was shocked. They soon found out that Blue's son, Light Blue, had been taken by a direwolf. Blue had let her son play outside, but then a direwolf appeared out of nowhere and grabbed him in its mouth before running off. Kyan had been there and tried to chase the monster, but it was too fast and escaped into the forest. She said it moved like it had been trained, and she felt angry that she couldn't stop it. That's when Schwartz finally understood why Kyan thought she was involved. But Schwartz promised she didn't do anything wrong and asked everyone to believe her. Kyan asked if she could swear to God, and Schwartz said she could. After that, everyone split into two groups. Kuro went southeast with Gray and Schwartz, while Violet headed toward the cave with Kyan and Apricot. He told Ivory and Father Snow White to stay in the church with the injured people. He also asked them to use magic in the sky as a signal if something went wrong. Before leaving, Schwartz asked Violet if she didn't want her joining the group. Violet said she was the Lord's wife and trusted Kuro's decision. Schwartz was a bit surprised to hear Violet call herself that. After that, everyone set out to find the monster. Deep in the forest, Kuro noticed there were no footprints anywhere. Schwartz asked if direwolves usually attacked in the area. Kuro said they didn't. The reason was simple. Direwolves were weaker than humans. Even though they could run fast or fly, they couldn't handle strong hits. A single blow could kill them, so they didn't usually attack people. Suddenly, a bird landed on Schwartz's arm. It told her there were no strange direwolves nearby. She passed the message to Kuro, who thought her skill of talking to animals was very useful. Then Schwartz asked Kuro again why he let her come along. Kuro said he saw her having fun with the children earlier. It was also the first time he saw Gray enjoying himself that much. It didn't seem like Schwartz was pretending. Suddenly, another bird showed up and told Schwartz something. Kuro asked what was going on. Schwartz said the birds had seen some children nearby. She took the lead and Kuro and Gray followed her. While running, Kuro told Gray to start getting his magic ready. As they went deeper into the forest, Kuro began to hear a mix of children's voices and monster sounds. He hoped Light Blue was safe. To their surprise, they found Light Blue riding a direwolf and playing around. When Light Blue saw Kuro and the others, he invited them to join him. He said the horse he was riding wanted to play, so he gave it some food and started playing with it. Kuro realized he had forgotten to teach Light Blue that monsters were usually dangerous, but strangely, this one really did seem to be playing. Schwartz calmly told the direwolf to go back to the forest and stay with its pack. She also warned it not to attack people. After that, Gray sent a signal into the sky to let the others know where they were. Soon, the group made their way out of the thick forest. Light Blue was finally reunited with his mother, Blue. She was very happy and said she had been really worried. Kuro felt relieved and thought that maybe everything was settled now. Light Blue asked if his mom was okay. Blue reminded him that she had told him not to go outside when it was raining. Then she lightly hit his head, and Kuro felt happy that things were peaceful again. Suddenly, Ivory showed up and asked if anyone was hurt. He told everyone not to hide any injuries from a doctor like him. Kuro told him to calm down, but Ivory insisted he already was. He said it was a rare case and quickly grabbed Light Blue, rushing him off to the infirmary. Kuro could just imagine Ivory getting arrested for kidnapping one day. Schwartz was relieved that everything turned out fine. She said she was heading back to the inn. Kuro thanked her for helping and offered to give her something in return. But Schwartz told him not to worry about it. If he really wanted to thank her, she said he could just greet her the next time they met. After she left, Gray leaned in and tried to whisper something to Kuro. But Kuro said he already understood what he was worried about. He started wondering how all this chaos even began. Gray pointed out that Shiki never had any reports of direwolves attacking people before. He wondered if this monster just came out for fun. Earlier, Schwartz mentioned that the direwolf had gotten separated from its pack and was hungry, but Light Blue was able to feed it. With everything that happened, Kuro realized he couldn't be sure about anything. He knew he had to stay alert. Then Kuro noticed something off. Gray asked what was wrong. That's when they realized Violet was missing. Kuro wondered if she hadn't seen Gray's signal or if she was still on her way back. But deep down he had a bad feeling. Something might have happened to her. Meanwhile, inside a cave, Violet was being healed by magic. Apricot said it would only help for a short time. Violet thanked her and said she was already feeling better. She also apologized for causing trouble. Apricot stayed calm and said it was fine, showing no hesitation in helping her. Violet thought Apricot probably meant she should just rest and not worry. She was also thankful that Apricot had brought bandages. Apricot said she brought them in case she needed to seal her demon arm. Violet still had trouble understanding what she meant. She remembered Kuro planning to ask Chloe about it later once they were safe. Violet still couldn't believe they had just been attacked by a strong monster like Fenrir. The group was shocked when it showed up. It went after Violet first, but she managed to dodge the attack. She wondered if a monster like that really lived in Shiki. While Apricot was getting a spell ready, Kyan explained that monsters like Fenrir usually stayed away from Shiki unless something made them angry. Just then, Apricot finished her spell and hit the Fenrir with flames. Kyan quickly pulled Apricot aside and said it was their chance to escape. As they tried to run, Violet tripped and broke her ankle. The Fenrir saw this and went after her. Before it could strike, Kyan jumped in and shielded Violet, taking the hit herself. Violet was shocked, but Kyan fought back and punched the monster in its left eye. The monster roared in pain. Apricot ran over and used healing magic on Kyan. After that, Kyan picked up Violet, and they all escaped together. At the same time, Schwartz was walking alone in the forest. She said it was time to get back to work. She pulled out a handkerchief and sniffed it. Then she said it couldn't be helped. Back in the present, Kyan finally woke up. She said the cave might be in danger too, since they had already made the Fenrir angry. Violet said sorry for asking her to protect her. Kyan told her she was okay and there was nothing to worry about. She reminded everyone about the signal they saw earlier. Since Light Blue had already been found, it was time for them to move too. Apricot offered to go first. Kyan said that was a good idea, especially since some of them were hurt and shouldn't be leading. Violet felt bad and said sorry. She thought she was useless, even though it was her job to protect the others. While Violet was lost in her thoughts, a strange fog appeared. Kyan and Apricot breathed it in and fell to the ground. Violet called out to them, but then someone she knew showed up. The person said sorry for making the girls fall asleep but promised not to hurt them. That's when Violet realized she had been right to be careful. She started to wonder if playing with the kids was also just a trick. Then Schwartz appeared with the Fenrir. She said it was time to kill Violet, just like someone had asked her to. She first said sorry to the Fenrir for getting him hurt. The Fenrir growled and Schwartz said she understood. But for now, she told him to scare away anyone who came near. If they tried to fight, he should hurt them. Violet tried to stand up and fight. Schwartz said it was finally time. She explained that it wasn't about mercy, but before doing anything, she gave Violet a chance to ask some questions. Violet didn't understand much, but she clearly knew one thing. Schwartz had caused all of this, just to follow what she called a request. Angry and confused, Violet asked what it really meant to kill her. Schwartz replied coldly. She said that someone told her Violet Heartfield wasn't good enough to be part of the former Duke's family. Before Violet could bring more shame to them, they wanted her gone, buried, and forgotten. That was when Violet finally understood. She remembered being scolded by everyone. Even her own parents didn't seem to care about her. Her fiancé, the prince, had admitted that he didn't like her selfish ways. She accepted being rejected by the prince, but this was too much. Violet found it strange and sad that people thought she didn't matter. When she came to Shiki, she thought she had changed. She believed she had grown in her own way. But now it seemed she was already judged as someone who couldn't be saved. She laughed bitterly, realizing people still saw her as a curse until the very end. Schwartz stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said that Violet being a jinx was a different issue. Violet got upset and pointed out that Schwartz had put children in danger just to try to kill her using monsters. Schwartz quickly said she didn't agree with that either. Her client had become interested in the children, so she allowed one of them to come along. But the client acted too fast and made the monster kidnap a child. Schwartz said that talking like this was her own selfish way of saying sorry. She ended by saying this was the end of the story. Violet stayed quiet for a moment. Then she asked Schwartz to stay away from Apricot and Cayenne. Schwartz agreed and even said that Fenrir would also keep his distance. Violet felt relieved. A strange feeling came over her. Even though she knew she was about to be killed, she was glad that no one else would get hurt. She suddenly remembered something Kuro once told her. That he liked people who worked hard and that she should be proud of herself. In the end, she hadn't done anything like a real couple would with him. She started to wonder if Kuro would be sad if she died. Or maybe he would feel better if she was gone. The thought that he might feel relieved made her sad. As Schwartz was trying to comfort her, Kuro appeared behind her and threw a punch. Schwartz reacted quickly and ducked just in time. Kuro quietly spoke some words and shot a magic attack at her. Schwartz dodged the attack with skill. Violet was surprised. Even though Kuro was shorter than the prince, his back looked strong and broad. She had finally gotten used to seeing him not as a noble but as a real man. Kuro then greeted Schwartz and said they had just seen each other recently. He told her that this time, he wasn't going to listen to any more of her excuses. Kuro apologized to Violet for being late. At first, Violet thought he looked cool, but then she noticed his arm was bleeding. Kuro told her not to worry because the blood came from the monster called Fenrir. He said the monster fought back, so things got messy. Violet was amazed that Kuro had managed to drive the creature away. Then Schwartz started laughing. She was surprised she hadn't noticed Kuro coming. She had collected some information about him before, but she didn't expect he would be this strong. Kuro said it was a big honor to be praised by someone known as the Empire's Fairy. Schwartz realized that Kuro already knew who she was, which made her curious. Her face suddenly turned cold and it scared Violet. She asked Kuro where he had heard about her. Kuro said his sources were secret and that she probably wouldn't believe him anyway. Violet was surprised that Kuro stayed calm, even with all the pressure. She began to wonder what kind of person her husband really was. Schwartz had heard rumors that Kuro was a strange and creepy guy, but now she saw he was far from ordinary. Kuro was shocked that the nickname had spread so much and finally lost his cool. Schwartz confirmed it was a name people often used for him. Suddenly, Schwartz threw a dagger at them. Kuro tried to block it, but it wasn't just one, she threw several. Somehow, Kuro managed to stop all of them. But then, one blade, coated in black and hidden in the shadows, hit him in the shoulder. It was too late to dodge. Kuro said assassins were very serious about their job. Schwartz said she was honored by his comment. Kuro gave a short laugh and told Violet to step back. He pulled the dagger out of his shoulder and said it didn't even count as a real injury. Then he stomped the ground and used a skill called Tremor Step. The ground cracked and broken pieces flew toward Schwartz. She was surprised and flipped backward to dodge. As she drew her sword, Kuro calmly asked if she really had no plans to back down. He told her that if she left Shiki peacefully, he would forget everything that had happened. Violet realized that Kuro was in a tough situation because he had someone to protect. Still, she was curious why he stayed so calm. Schwartz said sorry and explained that she wouldn't back out. Once a contract was made, she always saw it through. She also said that killing her wouldn't stop the mission because her children would continue it. Just then, Kuro shouted her name. His voice was cold and it made the girls feel afraid. He asked how Weiss was doing. Schwartz looked surprised and asked how he knew that name. Kuro said he just knew. He reminded her that she liked the kids because they reminded her of her younger brothers from the orphanage. But the most important one to her was Weiss, her only real family. Kuro also knew she kept a handkerchief that Weiss made for her birthday. Schwartz didn't say anything, though she looked unsure. Kuro mentioned he even knew the color of the embroidery on the handkerchief. She stayed silent. He didn't care if she believed him or not. He had friends. If anything happened to him, they would know she was responsible. He asked what would happen to the orphanage if she hurt him. Then he grabbed her by the neck and said that the woman who hired her had already been captured. Schwartz let go of her sword. Kuro told her to leave Shiki if Weiss mattered to her. Kuro had a hard time remembering everything about Schwartz. The information he had about the Casas came from his past life over 20 years ago. Since Schwartz arrived in Shiki, he acted like they were getting along. But in secret, he contacted a friend in the capital to compare his old memories with the new information. Schwartz ended up agreeing and Kuro let her go. After that, Kuro said they had two conditions. First, Schwartz had to cancel the job she requested. Second, she must never hurt the people living in Shiki. In return, he promised not to harm the orphanage. When Kuro asked if she agreed, Schwartz quickly swore she would follow both conditions. Then she looked at Violet and said sorry. She said she wouldn't ask for forgiveness but made it clear she didn't hate Violet. Before leaving, she said she didn't feel sorry for them either. Kuro then checked on the other girls and saw that they only had small injuries. He told them they could relax now. After that, he asked Violet if she was hurt, but Violet didn't answer. She was sitting in the corner, hugging her knees and hiding her face. Kuro didn't blame her, even though the danger was over. She had just found out that someone had been trying to kill her. That would scare anyone. The person behind it was from the same household that had been watching over her. It looked like the person acted alone, thinking they were protecting the family in a twisted way. Kuro went closer to her and told her that Gray and the others would be arriving soon. He said only the priest who caught the person behind the attack and a few others knew what really happened. Everyone else would think it was just a case of the Fenrir going out of control and dragging them into it. Violet still didn't say anything, and Kuro started to feel nervous. He then tried to cheer her up, saying she now had a family with him and Gray. He promised not to let something like this happen again. But after saying that, Kuro didn't even know what else to say. Suddenly, Violet spoke up and said it might be better if she wasn't around anymore. She felt like everyone had given up on her. Even her parents didn't seem to expect anything from her and maybe didn't see her as their daughter anymore. She looked at Cayenne and Apricot, who were both unconscious. Then she saw that Kuro was actually bleeding. She thought it was her fault and believed she had been causing too many problems for him and the others. She didn't want people who were kind to her to get hurt because of her. Kuro tried to make her feel better by saying it wasn't a big deal, and that even the others would agree. But Violet couldn't hold it in anymore and started crying. She asked Kuro what she was supposed to do, saying she didn't know anymore. Kuro didn't know what to say at first. Then a loud thunder roared outside, and somehow, that helped him understand how he truly felt. He reached into his coat and pulled out something. It was a small box. He asked Violet to take it. Violet was surprised when he opened the box and showed her a ring. Her eyes grew wide and her tears stopped for a moment. Kuro knelt in front of her with the ring and promised to stay by her side no matter what. Kuro took off Violet's gloves and said he should have done it much earlier. He stopped for a moment and looked at her hands. He had always been too shy to hold them. When he finally held her hands, Violet blushed. Kuro said he had many things to tell her, but for now he would just say one thing. He said he used to hate her, but now he wanted her to know that he was on her side. Kuro had never told Violet that he loved her, not even in his past life. This was the first time he felt something like this. He wondered if his voice sounded strange or if his face looked funny. He only cared about those things because of Violet. He asked her if they could figure things out together from now on. Even though their marriage started as something they didn't want, he believed it wasn't too late to fall in love after getting married. Then he gently placed a ring on her finger. He asked her not to say things like she didn't belong with him. As a family, he wanted them to support each other. When Violet looked closely at the ring, she began to cry. She asked if she was really good enough for him. Kuro told her clearly that he wanted her. Even though they got married because of certain situations, after seeing her cry, Kuro felt a strong need to stay by her side. Violet thanked Kuro from the bottom of her heart. She realized she wasn't alone anymore. Kuro promised to stay with her forever. Violet said she was happy now and she kept crying, but this time they were tears of joy. Kuro felt happy too, but then he wondered if he should hug her. He wanted to, but thought it might be too much since Violet was still tired from the recent attack. Just then, the two girls finally woke up and looked at the couple. They could feel the sweetness between them. Apricot said it was the first time she had seen a confession and asked what their relationship was now. Cayenne joked that it looked like they were already living a married life. Then she added that the next step must be working together at night. Apricot remembered that the two were actually married. Kuro got angry and asked how long they had been awake. He was worried they had heard something about the assassination. The girls explained that the thunder had woken them up. Kuro felt embarrassed because they had heard his full confession. Kyan thought everything must have gone well and believed Kuro had taken care of the Fenrir by himself. They wondered if everything was finally settled. Kyan was also happy to see Violet doing well. Violet was surprised and realized that Kyan was actually a kind person. Kyan then said that Kuro should pamper her too, since she was a fragile girl. But Kuro wasn't sure if someone who had taken out a Fenrir's eye could really be called delicate. The two argued a bit, but Kuro finally decided to help Kyan since she was the most hurt. At that moment, Violet grabbed Kuro's injured arm. He asked what was wrong. With sad, puppy-like eyes, she asked if he was just going to leave her after promising to stay by her side. Kuro's heart melted. He couldn't walk away after hearing that. He promised to support her and said he wouldn't go anywhere. But Violet pointed out that Kuro was about to help Kyan, who she thought was better than her. Kyan teased Kuro, asking if he was getting nervous. Apricot joined in, chanting something dramatic about them being tied together. Kyan, acting like a big sister, joked that a kiss might solve everything. She said, as a servant of God, she would witness the moment. Kuro complained, saying it was weird to have his first kiss in front of a nun and someone acting like a fantasy character. Then Violet called his name. With teary eyes, she gently asked if he really wasn't going to kiss her. Deep down, Kuro wanted to. He looked at her for a while as the two girls cheered in the background. He wondered if a kiss on the cheek or hand would be enough, but his eyes were already fixed on her lips. All of a sudden, Apricot started sneezing. She said it was just because she felt cold, but Kuro noticed that their clothes were still wet from the rain and realized that was the real reason. Kyan saw him looking and joked that he probably wanted them to take off their clothes. Apricot was surprised, then proudly said her body was as special as valuable jewels. Kuro got annoyed and asked them to stop acting foolish. Violet then guessed that Kuro might actually be interested in women's bodies and asked if she should take her clothes off too. Kuro quickly told her not to get the wrong idea. Kyan suggested that Kuro should also take off his clothes so it wouldn't be so awkward if everyone was in the same situation. Kuro was completely confused and couldn't believe what was happening. He blamed Schwartz for starting all this nonsense with her wild behavior. Just then, Gray showed up and asked if Kuro planned to bring shame to his mother. His serious tone made everyone calm down right away. They all shouted that it was just a big misunderstanding. A few days later at the Lord's mansion, Gray said he would handle explaining everything after the recent events. Kuro said he was counting on him. The truth about Schwartz's attempted assassination was kept secret from the people in Shiki's land. The official story was that a monster named Fenrir wandered into town, was defeated, and then captured. However, news about a strong monster attacking the town had already spread to nearby areas, and everyone there became more alert. There was still a lot of work to do to make sure something like that wouldn't happen again. At that moment, Violet called out to Kuro. He asked if she still needed rest and suggested taking a break, but Violet said she just needed to check something. She explained that she could only remember up to the part where Kuro gave her a ring. After that, her memory became unclear. Then, Violet started acting wild. She tried to take off her clothes, asked for a kiss, and even begged to be carried home on his back. Kuro found it hard to deal with, but he managed to calm her down and help her hide that side of herself again. Violet thought she had imagined the whole thing and believed she might have put the ring on by herself. Kuro felt a bit upset that she thought it was just a dream, but Violet told him that she remembered his words clearly, how he promised to be on her side and support her like family. She also remembered how Kuro said he accepted her for who she was. Kuro felt embarrassed hearing her say all that. Still, Violet felt unsure about herself. She remembered how cold, arrogant, and uncaring she used to be. Kuro told her that everyone had flaws, even him. But if something needed to change, he said it was worth trying to improve. Violet then asked if he was still willing to stay with her. Kuro promised he would. He admitted that maybe he was taking advantage of her weakness and making her depend on him. But he also said it was okay if she ever wanted to leave. He reminded her that she wasn't his property, and that she had the right to make her own choices. But deep down, Kuro truly wanted to fall in love with Violet, with everything that made her who she was. At first, he only saw her as a character in a game, but now he wanted to know the real her as family. Violet apologized for misunderstanding again. Kuro joked that he had to give a lecture now and then or he'd lose his place. Violet laughed for real, and it was the first time Kuro saw her laugh like that. Then Violet realized she hadn't given him her answer yet. She held his hand. Outside the room behind the door, Gray listened to the two of them with a blank expression. Violet had been thinking about something important. She hadn't given Kuro her answer yet. She believed she might have caused him trouble in many ways, but she still hoped they could stay together forever. She promised to stay by his side and support him no matter what. Kuro felt touched by her words. They quietly looked at each other with care. As the room went quiet, Violet imagined Kuro pulling her into a warm hug. But then, Kuro suddenly noticed something. He walked to the door to check if someone was outside. Violet asked if something was wrong. Kuro said he thought he felt something, but maybe it was just his imagination. Outside, Gray quietly walked away unnoticed. Kuro closed the door and thanked Violet. Once again, he looked forward to spending his life with her. Violet returned the gesture and smiled. Meanwhile, Gray had just finished his task. He felt relieved that no one caught him eavesdropping. He wondered if things went well between the two. It had been 4 years since he started living with Kuro, who had become both a master and father figure to him. Gray had no memory of his real parents and used to live in the slums. He was kidnapped by traffickers and later sold to Shiki's former lord, but Kuro had saved him. That day, everything changed. Kuro gave him a family name and taught him how to use magic. Gray couldn't even count how many times he owed Kuro his life. Later, Violet became like a mother to him. She used to be a duke's daughter. She was smart, strong, and skilled in magic. Gray looked up to her a lot. More than anything, she was the woman Kuro had chosen, and Gray hoped the two would be happy together. However, Apricot once said the couple didn't seem like a real married couple. This made Gray sad. It was hard for him to hear that the people closest to him didn't seem like they truly connected. He went to Father Snow White and shared his worries. Snow White told him that the couple just needed time. He said they should talk properly without being busy or stressed. He suggested they should spend time getting to know each other better. Gray agreed. He realized that since getting married, Kuro and Violet hadn't really had a quiet moment to talk. He wondered if helping them have that time was a good idea. While Gray was thinking about what to do, the playboy found him and asked why he looked so down. Gray shared his thoughts. Kaki jokingly said they should just get naked together. Gray, being innocent, thought Kaki meant some kind of bonding time. Then Kaki reminded him about the newly discovered hot springs. Gray remembered that Kuro planned to turn it into a tourist spot. Kaki suggested letting the couple bathe together and have a slow, peaceful time to talk. Gray agreed, thanked Kaki for the advice, and left with a new plan in mind. Gray went back to the mansion and told Violet to visit the hot springs with Kuro. Violet was surprised and blushed. She didn't expect that kind of suggestion from someone like Gray. She confirmed that she and Gray were married, but admitted that things still felt a bit awkward. She wasn't used to bathing with others and had been taught to never show herself in a vulnerable state. Still, she thought that being with Gray might not be so bad. She said they didn't usually get time to talk like that, and then invited Gray to take a bath with her next time. Gray was shocked, but he didn't think it was anything bad. He believed Violet just wanted to spend time with him, like how parents sometimes take baths with their children. Gray had already felt relaxed when he bathed with Kuro before, so he thought Violet was trying to bond with him as a mother. That idea made him happy. However, Violet explained that she still needed to get used to bathing with others, especially those of the same gender. She said going in with someone of the opposite gender could still make her nervous. She hoped she could try it with Gray first. Gray was confused by what she meant. Still, he told her he'd be in her care when the time came. Even though her words bothered him a little, they agreed to go to the bath together someday. After that, Kyan was busy with her work, but the children kept bothering her. She jokingly scared them by saying she would eat them as a divine punishment. Kyan had once been kicked out of the kingdom. The reason was simple. She had beaten up the archbishop because he was taking advantage of the believers. Even though she was punished for it, she didn't regret what she did. She was sent to live in the countryside, but it wasn't so bad. The air was fresh, the food tasted great, and the kids there were really cute. Just when she was about to focus on more serious work, Violet showed up. She said she needed advice. As a sister of the church, it was part of Kyan's job to listen to the worries and concerns of the townspeople. Kyan was surprised when Violet asked how to get along better with Kuro. Violet reminded her that she and Kuro were now officially married. She said she wanted their relationship to improve, but even though she was trying hard, it still felt awkward. Kyan wanted to shout out that she also wanted to get along well with Father Snow White, but she held back since she was supposed to be giving advice, not sharing her own feelings. Kyan then pointed out that the ring Kuro had given Violet was already proof that he really cared about her. Violet said she was truly happy when she received the ring. It felt like a gift from Kuro's heart as her husband, and she wanted to treasure it forever. Kyan asked if Violet had really come for advice or just to brag. Violet quickly said that wasn't the case at all. Kyan could only come to one conclusion. Even though she knew Kuro really cared about Violet, Violet wanted to take things a bit further. She asked if they had kissed yet. When Violet didn't answer, Kyan was confused. Then Violet said that Kuro had only kissed her on the forehead. Violet started to wonder if she was even Kuro's type. Kyan didn't believe that since she already knew how much Kuro valued Violet, but she still wondered why Kuro wasn't making a move. Kyan then suggested something bold. She told Violet to sneak into Kuro's bed and take off her clothes in front of him. To her surprise, Violet said she already did that on the first night, but Kuro turned her down. Kyan was shocked. Violet explained that Kuro saw through her reckless actions and stayed calm the whole time. Kyan couldn't believe it, especially since Violet had one of the most attractive bodies in the world. She even started to think Kuro might have nerves of steel. Then something hit her. Kayan guessed that maybe Kuro liked other girls. Violet was shocked to hear that. She didn't know what to think but said she wanted to respect Kuro's preferences. She even worried that Kuro might be into even a guy, an animal, a monster, or the undead. Kayan was surprised by how open-minded Violet was. Still, Kayan was concerned for Violet and wanted to help her. She got an idea and held Violet's hand tightly. She said that just accepting the situation wasn't love, and that it was wrong to let it continue. Kayan told Violet to show Kuro her good side and not let him fall for someone else. Kayan believed that true love should be respected. But right now, the problem was that Kuro seemed to be making Violet act like someone else. To stop Kuro from going down the wrong path, Kayan told Violet to guide him. Violet was shocked and asked what she should do. Kayan smiled and told her to leave it to her. She proudly said she would come up with the perfect solution. Not long after, Kuro was seen enjoying the hot springs. The natural spring that appeared near Shiki was just like the ones from Kuro's past life. The water looked a bit murky, but it didn't seem dangerous. Kuro planned to tell the other regions about it too. He then wondered if Kayan was delayed by something and hoped she brought back a proper set of clothes. A little earlier, Kuro had gone to check a part of the forest after Kayan reported seeing a strange monster. She said someone claimed to see a creature they had never seen before. Kuro felt uneasy about it, especially after the recent Fenrir problem. While they were there, Kayan suddenly pushed Kuro and said her foot slipped. She ended up pinning him in the mud, then stood up looking relieved. Kuro got annoyed because his face hit the ground. Kayan promised she didn't do it on purpose. She looked at his clothes and pointed out how dirty they were. Then she quickly ran towards something and said it was lucky to find a hot spring nearby. Kuro started to feel suspicious about how she was talking. Kayan told him to clean himself up while she brought him a new set of clothes. Kuro said it was fine to go back dirty, but Kayan told him that a divine messenger would return with fresh clothes for him anyway. Back in the present, Kuro started to wonder what Kayan had planned. Strangely, a towel had already been prepared for him. As he began to relax in the warm water, someone came up behind him. Because of the steam, Violet couldn't see clearly and asked if Gray was already in the water. Kuro recognized her voice. Violet said she came with Kayan but somehow got dirty along the way. She was surprised to find someone already in the hot spring and thought it was Gray. She stepped toward the water, saying it was time to keep a promise. But to her surprise, it was Kuro. He greeted her and said the water felt nice. Violet, shocked, said Kuro's name loudly. Kuro quietly promised himself that he would make Kayan pay for this. Violet ended up joining Kuro in the bath. To break the silence, Kuro said the water felt good. Violet replied that the temperature was just right. Kuro said it would be nice if the bath was open to the public, and Violet agreed. Another quiet moment passed. Kuro didn't know what to do. Violet was sitting beside him, completely naked. She didn't bring a towel into the water because it was considered rude to do so. Kuro thought she was being respectful. Then he realized something odd. His clothes were gone. He and Violet were now in the same situation. He tried to stay calm by thinking back to when he lived in a small apartment with his sister. He also remembered that, as a dressmaker, he had often worked closely with women. Because of that, he felt he could stay calm and handle the moment without panicking. At that moment, Violet called out to Kuro and he asked what was wrong. Without warning, Violet hugged him tightly, pressing her skin against his. Kuro quickly lost his focus. He didn't know what to do. Right now, Violet wasn't acting like a sibling, and this wasn't for work either. There was really no reason for them to be this close. He thought maybe he was this nervous because it was Violet standing in front of him. Suddenly, Violet began laughing at herself. She had tried to be bold, but in the end, she still felt shy about what she was doing. Kuro told her to calm down. He waved his hand to cool her off because she looked a little dizzy. He wondered how they even ended up in such a strange situation. Violet tried to relax and said that since they were now husband and wife, showing their skin to each other shouldn't feel weird. Kuro said it wasn't a big deal either and told her not to push herself too hard. Seeing Violet more nervous than he was made Kuro feel calmer. Still, he couldn't ignore the feeling on his back. He could tell how soft Violet's body was. He tried to distract himself by starting a new conversation and asked if she had talked to Kayan about something. Violet struck a pose and acted playful, which made Kuro wonder if she was copying Schwartz. He thought Kayan might have given Violet the wrong idea about something. Kuro planned to tell Father Snow White about it later. Still, the fact that Violet had gone to Kayan for advice made Kuro feel like he might have done something wrong. His own words even started to annoy him. But Violet shook her head. She said it wasn't his fault at all. Instead, she leaned closer and said it was her decision. She just wanted to find a way to get closer to Kuro. That made Kuro blush again. Violet didn't look as calm as usual, and seeing her trying so hard for his sake made him feel happy. He thought it was really sweet, and it gave him feelings he didn't expect. As Kuro was trying to force himself on Violet, Gray suddenly showed up. The couple was surprised to see their adopted child there. Kuro asked why he had come. Gray said that Apricot had told him about the hot springs, so he came to try them out. Violet said the timing was great since they had planned to take a bath together anyway. She thought it was a nice chance for the whole family to relax in the water. As Gray slowly walked toward the hot spring, Violet noticed something strange about him. Gray asked what was wrong. Violet pointed to his chest. Gray thought she was talking about his scar and explained that it wouldn't go away, even with healing magic. Kuro remembered that the scar came from the former Lord of Shiki and wondered if Violet was thinking about that too. But Violet was actually talking about something else, Gray's chest. She was shocked to realize Gray was a boy. She apologized, saying she had always thought he was a girl. The two boys were confused and just said, "Huh?" at the same time. Even with the mix-up, the three of them enjoyed the hot spring together. Violet said it felt nice to bathe with everyone, and Kuro agreed. Gray guessed the couple had been enjoying the bath together before he arrived. He felt happy knowing they were doing things that married couples were supposed to do. At the same time, Violet kept thinking about the moment when Kuro held her. Things started to feel unclear, but for now, the three of them shared a special bath together, something they might not get to do again. After the bath, Kuro was surprised to find that some clean clothes had arrived without anyone noticing. A note was left behind, saying sorry for getting the clothes dirty. Meanwhile, Kyan discovered that Apricot had also recommended the hot springs to Gray. She couldn't believe her plan to help the married couple grow closer had failed. Right then, Father Snow White appeared with a serious look on his face. He told Kyan to quickly call back the Lord and his wife. He said the military was now on its way to Shiki. Kuro and Violet soon found out that the knights were on their way to Shiki. Kyan explained that the sudden appearance of the Fenrir had likely caused more monster activity, and the knights were coming to check out the nearby areas. In this country, knights were also called soldiers, but they were the best of the best. Kuro didn't understand why such important people would come all the way to a far-off place just to investigate. Kyan gave him a strange look and turned the question back to him. Kuro started to wonder who she really was. Even Violet seemed unsure. She quietly asked if the woman with them was truly the Kyan they knew. Just then, Father Snow White gently patted Kyan's shoulder and told her to take it easy, thinking she might be nervous. Kyan replied sweetly, saying she was fine. Kuro whispered to Violet that Kyan always acted like that around Father Snow White. It seemed like Father didn't notice anything unusual and kept acting like his normal self. Kyan then said she needed to act proper and pure since she was just a beginner among those who believed in God. Kuro didn't really get what she meant. Then he remembered they had a lot to do, like finding places for the knights to stay, getting enough food, and explaining things to the local people. Violet said she could help by greeting the knights when they arrived. After Kyan and Father Snow White left, Kuro noticed that Violet seemed upset. He asked if she was okay and thought she might be worried about the soldiers who were coming. Violet said it would be fine if they were people she knew, and since they were on duty, they probably wouldn't come talk to her. Kuro figured these soldiers might know about what had happened to the academy 2 months earlier. He asked Violet to stay with them on the mission because he didn't want her to get hurt. Violet was surprised but then smiled. She felt happy knowing Kuro cared about her that much. She also wanted to protect him and, thinking about their future, asked him to work with her on this. Kuro told her not to push herself too hard. Violet agreed and told him the same. She asked him to rely on her too. They both smiled at each other quietly until Kyan suddenly showed up, clearly annoyed that they were being sweet to each other out in the open. They could even hear Kyan cracking her knuckles. Then Kaki appeared and asked where the military women were. He said it would be a waste not to use the nighttime hangout spot he had set up. Kuro told him to go home. Since the military women hadn't arrived yet, Kaki decided to go find the women of Shiki and invite them instead. Kuro couldn't understand why Kaki had even shown up in the first place. Just then, another strange person showed up, saying some dramatic words that sounded kind of familiar. She proudly said she had created a new magic spell that could drive away the corrupted knights of the abyss. Kuro tried to send her away, but Gray got curious and asked what kind of magic it was. Apricot, happy that her apprentice was interested, said it was something so special that even the knights wouldn't understand. For some reason, Gray looked like he really admired this strange girl. Then Ivory arrived and asked if the military had shown up yet. Since everyone knew they were running late because of injuries and problems, Ivory wanted to rush out and help them. But Kuro stopped him and told him not to imagine things. Father Snow White came to take Ivory with him. Kuro couldn't help but wonder if all these people had too much free time. Out of nowhere, Orchid suddenly appeared in a creepy way. He gave Kuro a device that could light up the dark at night. Since Violet looked surprised and a bit worried, Kuro explained that he had asked for it after what happened with Fenrir the other day. Orchid also gave him a manual. Kuro thanked him and promised to give him something in return next time. Just like that, Orchid vanished without a sound. Violet said she still couldn't think of Orchid as a nice person. Kuro agreed, saying Orchid gave off the vibe of an evil sorcerer. Meanwhile, Father Snow White noticed someone coming from a distance. But something didn't seem right. Kyan asked what was wrong. Father Snow White said the people walking toward them looked very young. When Kuro looked closely, he saw that they were wearing the official uniforms of the Kingdom School, students from Azaria Academy. The acting leader said sorry for being late and started to introduce himself. But before he could continue, he asked why Violet was in Shiki. Violet was surprised and didn't know how to respond. Kuro remembered that just 2 months ago, Violet was still going to the academy with these same people. That also meant she probably didn't want them to come here. Another man let out a sigh and asked if Violet had no plans to answer. The man on the right was Ash Austin, the prince's personal assistant. The man on the left was Chartreuse Calvin, the son of the Knight Commander. Violet remembered how both of them once told her never to show up in front of them again. She tried to calm herself down. Since they had already agreed to work together, she knew she had to stay strong. But she still remembered what the prince had told her, that he didn't like her. She kept asking herself why those words were stuck in her mind. Was she really that weak? At that moment, Kuro spoke up to support Violet. He introduced himself properly as the Lord of Shiki. Then he asked why students from Azaria Academy had come to Shiki. That was when Violet realized that Kuro was now there to protect her. Ash apologized for not recognizing the Lord of Shiki and admitted that he had been rude. He explained that he was the first-year class representative and that he and 14 other students had come to Shiki for a mission to investigate and fight monsters. After Ash spoke, all the students gave a salute together. Kuro asked why it was students doing the investigation instead of the military. Even though the question seemed odd to Ash, he answered by saying they got a message saying they could do this as part of their training. Chartreuse added that the academy split students into groups so they could learn how to work together. These groups were made to include both nobles and commoners, boys and girls, to help them get used to working as a team. Their group was now assigned to Shiki. Kuro gave them a sharp look and said he understood the situation. Violet noticed it. She had never seen Kuro make that kind of face before. She could tell he was annoyed. Ash tried to focus on Violet and was about to say something in a serious tone, but someone suddenly laughed loudly and interrupted him. Apricot showed up, clapping her hands and praising the students for arriving instead of the knights. She told them to step forward if they wanted to see her win against everyone. She said she would take care of the monsters herself. Gray clapped for her. Ash asked what this strange girl was talking about. Apricot was surprised that he couldn't even understand something so simple. She then calmly walked away, telling them to follow her even if they didn't understand, and to try to live up to her expectations. Violet wondered why Apricot was acting so differently that day. Kuro then asked Violet and Kyan to look after Apricot, since it wasn't a good idea to leave her alone. He thought they might figure out what she was planning. Violet soon realized that Apricot was acting that way to help her. Apricot was trying to give her a chance to leave the area without trouble. Violet understood what Kuro meant, so she left with Kyan. Before they walked away, Kyan asked Father Snow White and the other students to leave the area as well. Ash and Chartreuse tried to stop them, but Kuro stepped in and offered to show them where they could stay. Father Snow White said they could stay at the church where he worked, as long as no one had a problem with that. Ash asked the others if they were okay with it and no one disagreed. The students politely asked to be looked after. Gray offered to take their carriages to the stables. At the same time, Violet kept glancing back at the others. Kyan gave her a gentle tap to remind her that she had friends now. Violet felt grateful to her. Even though she had told Kuro to rely on her, she realized she was the one depending on everyone else. Meanwhile, a girl was watching Violet and Kyan as they walked away. Just as she thought, the girl was Violet. This girl was the main character of the game, the one shown on the cover of Kasasu. That's all for the recap up to Chapter 14. Please take a look at the pinned comment for information about the next part.